And a good Wednesday morning to you, Quad Cities. It is Wednesday, September 10th already. The time is 9 o'clock, and it is time for Ask Andrew Live. Welcome in, brand new episode, and we are live here on the 8+ app and also on our social media pages as well. It's great to have you along here on what has been a fantastic week of weather so far, and it's going to get a little bit hotter heading into the weekend. We've got a lot to talk about, including that heat, the heat index readings for the weekend, how much longer we're going to have to wait for a decent chance at seeing some rain around here. Plus, we're also going to be talking about corn sweat. And I know we've already talked about that in length, but I have some new data and some new numbers to show you this morning that will make that direct connection between corn sweat and increasing humidity levels or dew point levels here in the Quad Cities region. If this is your first time, welcome aboard. We're happy to have you. How this works, we're going to do a quick weather discussion right off the top here. We're also going to review the two questions that I answered in more detail from our Good Morning Quad Cities episodes this week. And then at the end here, in the final 10 to 15 minutes or so, is an opportunity for you to ask your own weather-related questions, and we will answer them live right here on the stream. So happy to have you along. Again, this is the only 30-minute strictly weather show here in the Quad Cities that is streaming at this time, so we're happy to have you. We have had a very, very nice week. We have been so spoiled weather-wise. Not a lot to complain about, though, you know, some of us still would like to see a little bit of rain. I'm not complaining that much because it slowed down the lawn a little bit, so we're getting a break from having to keep mowing, but I'm sure the mowers aren't liking that. You're kind of getting a little hit to your income there. So we're going to start with a little weather chat, what's going on, what we can expect in the next several days. What's been interesting is we've actually been tracking some showers and thunderstorms that have not been all that far away from us this morning. These have been up parts of northern Iowa, also into southern Wisconsin. I'll take you to live radar there in a moment. But it's just been another gorgeous start to the day where we've had all this sunshine and a little bit of light fog as well. This has been so, so nice. Before we go any further, and I just noticed our director, Aiden, I should probably tell you how to get your questions into us, right? Well, there's two ways. The best way is right here at the bottom of your screen, 309-304-0888. You don't call it, but you text it. That will get it to our digital folks, and then they in turn will get it to me. You can also put a comment on our Facebook live stream as well. I'm monitoring that, so a couple different ways you can get those questions in to us. But yeah, let's get back to the weather situation here this morning. Beautiful. We had nice sunshine ongoing. We actually had some decent temperatures too, and we had a huge spread in temperatures this morning. I had some hometowns that were sitting in the 40s. I had others that were close to 60. There was quite a difference in those temperatures because some hometowns had some wind while other hometowns did not. And also some had clouds and some did not. But right now we're getting more uniformity to those temperatures. A lot of us are in the low 60s, a couple upper 50s, especially near Makokata at this hour, but the rest of us are quickly catching up to where we should be at this hour. And here's what it's going to look like for the next 8 hours. Getting into the 80s today. Our first run-in with the 80s in quite some time. We've been enjoying this really cool fall-like air, but that's going to be coming to an end as we get into the upcoming weekend. Today, though, still promises to be really comfortable around here. We're going to have just a few clouds here as we go into this afternoon, and 82 will be our high. Now, as we get into this evening, those clouds will begin to clear off. We'll go mostly clear tonight and actually see those temperatures get into the mid-50s. Tomorrow, though, promises to be a warmer day. We're talking 85 or so as we get into the afternoon. Now let's talk the numbers here. And by numbers, not just temperature, but I want to talk about the heat index number because this is going to become a big factor as we go into the upcoming weekend. Now right now, as we go into this afternoon, it mirrors the actual temperature. So these numbers are not really meaning a whole lot. And it's kind of the same thing tomorrow, unless you're in our far southwest hometowns, but especially Friday. That's when you're going to notice down here, southeast Iowa, west central Illinois, you've got all these low 90s coming in. By the time we get to Saturday, this is when it's really noticeable. Look at this, getting near triple-digit heat index readings by Saturday afternoon as temperatures climb into the low to mid-90s. We'll see these numbers, your heat index getting close to 100 degrees as we go into the afternoon. And Sunday will provide the same scenario where we're still going to see these high heat index values. Now, none of this is likely going to require a heat advisory, but it is a good reminder that if you're going to be out and about this weekend, I know there's going to be a lot of stuff going on, make sure you're keeping up on your hydration game, especially because we're going to be dealing with a little bit more drier air versus what we would see, say, a month ago or in July. This may make you a little bit more vulnerable to those heat-related illnesses, so keep that in mind as we head into the upcoming weekend. But we're not the only ones that are going to be dealing with this heat. This heat is going to be baked in and locked in for several days, and it's not just us here in the Quad Cities, but it's going to be throughout the whole Midwest as a whole. That fall-like preview and that pattern are going to be moving its way eastward with time, and of course that's going to take the cool air away from us and bring us back into the heat. I want to talk a little bit about the 8-day really quickly, and then we'll go into some of our questions that we had here too. So here's the 8-day in all of its glory, our #1 requested graphic at WQAD.com. There you can see 90 Saturday, Sunday. There's the records. I know it might be a little hard to see, but the record high for Saturday is 97. We're close to that. We're very, very close to that. Sunday's record, I don't think we're going to blow past that. That's 99. At least I hope we don't. Right now I'm going 95 there. But even early next week, we still have that potential to see 90s. And as I take you into the 14-day outlook, it's not going to last forever. It does eventually have to cool down again. But there you see, we have to wait a while as we continue to see 80s through the end of next week into the start of the weekend, the following weekend. It will not be until the week after when we'll start to see those temperatures finally drop back to more fall-like levels. And there will be some rain chances mixed in here. Model data is still having a really, really tough time sorting out when we're actually going to get some moisture back in here and enough forcing to get some rain. But right now, at least through early next week, it does not appear we have very many meaningful rainfall opportunities. And that's why we're a little concerned about potentially getting ourselves back into some kind of a drought situation. Now, we'll likely start to see some of that return, perhaps as early as the drought outlook that comes out, if not this week, probably next week, we'll start to see some of that influence. But right now, none of our area is currently in drought, at least in the immediate Quad Cities region. And I'm actually going to pull up this graphic so you can see it here that shows you exactly where drought areas are and where they are not. I just got to find it. There it is. Let's give the computer a second to load it up. There you see some areas to the southwest are starting to get back into pre-drought conditions. Near Fairfield, kind of west of Wapello there. Now that area is likely going to expand as we get into next week and the week after, especially given the fact that we don't have a lot of meaningful rainfall. So ignore the numbers on the left, or excuse me, on the right. Those need to be updated, and I'll update those tomorrow when we get the new outlook. But yeah, it certainly looks like things are going to be drying out very, very quickly. Still not seeing any real big opportunity for rain. We can actually take our future track all the way out to about a week here, and I'll show you that. So there's through September 18th, so that's the next 8 days. There's a little bit of that in there, but you can see the bulk of the rain is still well to the west of us. That's kind of where the active storm track has been positioned here the last few days, and that is likely where it is going to remain. So we're kind of in a little bit of a rainfall bubble here in the Quad Cities for the next week or so. The hope is that eventually after next week, we're going to grab onto some of this activity and shove it a little bit further eastward, especially as some of the heat begins to break down. So that's what we're waiting for in terms of rain. Again, not much in the near term. Looks like we're going to have to wait a little bit. The other thing I want to talk about, too, before we get to your questions is digging into some of the data over the last couple of days, because it's been a while since we've had to talk about severe weather. It's almost been a month since we've had to talk about it. Things have really, really gotten quiet here in the Quad Cities. So let me show you some of the numbers here. What I'm showing you in blue are the average number of severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings per month in the Quad Cities, and this average goes all the way back to 1986. You can see it peaks in June, and then we start getting this rapid decline in the average number of warnings. Here's how this year has worked out, and it's been a really funky year because we had a really busy start with severe weather in March, but we didn't have very much in May, which is typically kind of a blockbuster month here for us in the Quad Cities. You can see it's the second highest on the chart there in terms of the number of warnings we get. But this May had way less warnings than we typically do. We only had 10 in our region. Then we got into June. It got a little more active, but it was still quieter than normal. And then came July, and we just busted right past the average there. The average is right about 27. We more than doubled that. You can see we did 68. So we really got busy in July. August was the same story. It was busy as well. We had 23 warnings issued in our region, and the average is just about 16, 17. So that was busy. Will September offer the same? That remains to be seen. It doesn't look like anything's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks anyway, but notice the average is only about 6 or 7, so it's not going to take much in terms of a severe weather event to bust past that average. But no doubt it's been quiet around here, and I don't have any severe weather prospects in the near future, but I want to remind you that we're going to be entering that time of year where we get into what we call our secondary severe weather season. So we're all used to that primary season, which is right here in the spring. Getting into the summer, we get that big peak. Then we get kind of this little summer slump here. And that is especially true at the end of summer, when there's still a lot of heat, but there's not a lot of cool air coming in yet. Now we're going to start entering that second severe weather season. And that comes in right here as we get into the beginning of fall in the next several weeks here. So we'll see how robust that is. I'm not seeing a clear-cut signal in terms of it's going to be a big second severe weather season or anything like that, but it is something that we're going to continue to track here in the next several weeks. So lots and lots and lots to look forward to there. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's go to our question, and we'll start with the one that I had this morning. This was actually a really cool one. I was digging into the data all day yesterday before I left work, and I dug some more last night. So I want to show you what I found. So the question came from Larry in Davenport, and he was asking, how much warmer is the dew point due to corn sweat? So how much of an influence does corn sweat have on our dew point? And can we measure that? Is there data to back that up? The answer is yes, there is. So this is what we found, and this is also according to the National Weather Service as well, including all the other sources I looked at. So it's not just corn, but corn and soybean crops, they can actually increase the dew point by as much as 5 to 10 degrees. And that may not seem like a lot, but it does make a huge difference when you go from a day that's just a little humid to a day that can be oppressively humid. This is all it takes to make that difference, 5 to 10 degrees. What about the raw data? So I'm going to give you a minute to kind of absorb this graphic. So what I'll point out here is on the left-hand side of your screen, that 54, the scale that goes up to 68, that's the average dew point number. And what that corresponds to is that jagged blue line that's going all over the place. On the right-hand side of your screen, and in orange, are the number of acres of both corn and soybeans that have been planted each year in Illinois and Iowa combined from 1929 all the way to today, 2025. The dashed blue line that you're seeing in the middle, that is the dew point trend line. So there is clearly a correlation going on here. Notice how our acreage of corn and soybeans continues to go up. It's kind of flatlining right now, but we're still seeing some years that have higher acreage than others, while our dew point temperature is also corresponding with that as well. We're seeing that gradual rise in the dew point trend here. So that's the raw data showing that exact correlation that yes, evapotranspiration, whether it be from corn, whether it be from soybeans, has a direct connection and a direct impact on those dew point temperatures. That is why our summers are feeling so much more humid as time goes on, because we're getting more and more of that moisture put into the air. And that's especially true when you have a year like this year where we didn't have a whole lot of drought this summer. We had consistent rain. In fact, we had heavy rain at times this summer. And that really just piled on the extra moisture you needed to get the corn sweat and the evapotranspiration right off the charts. But yeah, you can see there are some years that we have a really big spike in those dew points and that the trend line is heading up. So this is not to blame the farmers. This is a natural process, but it goes to explain why our summers are feeling so much hotter, even though the temperature itself is not getting hotter. It all boils down to what's going on with the dew point. Speaking of hot, before I get to our other question, looking at 90s that we've had so far this year. We're right on par here with the average, but what I want to show you is the number of 90s in September, another little cool graph that we can dive into. So our average is 2 days worth of 90s this month. Obviously, looking at the 8-day, we're going to blow right past that, and we may be on par to meet what we did last year, which was 5 days worth of 90s in 2024. The most we've ever had was 11. Hopefully we don't repeat that this year. But what's interesting is the number of 90-degree days in each September, each year in the Quad Cities, is actually decreasing. We've gone from an average of 3, now we're about an average of 2. So we've lost a day since 1940. That's how far back that data goes. So in the span of I'd say 70, 80 plus years, we've lost a day or two in here in terms of the average number of 90-degree days. So we're actually getting cooler in September in terms of how much heat, how much of those hotter days we're actually seeing. Someone had asked me about that earlier too, wanting to provide some of that data. So that was interesting. This September is probably going to defy that, but nonetheless, that's what the data shows. The other question we had, this one was asked on Monday, and this had to do with humidity, asking why is the humidity always highest in the morning versus in the afternoon? So here's my explanation for that. So first, let's define what humidity is. So humidity is essentially measuring how much moisture that's in the air currently versus how much it can hold. So it's measuring storage capacity. Think of it like a bucket. You've got a bucket that can hold moisture. So what happens is, as you can see here on the daily humidity scale, the humidity is always highest in the morning, and then we drop this off significantly in the afternoon, followed by another little increase here as we go into the evening. Why is that the case? Well, this is why. Let's talk about the morning versus the afternoon. Let's start with the morning first. So with the morning, your air temperature, your actual temperature drops very close to the dew point temperature. And how the mathematical formula works is you're taking those two numbers, dividing them, and multiplying by 100. So the closer the air temperature is to the dew point temperature, the more relative humidity you're going to have. For example, this morning, we had a temperature of 48 degrees. What was our dew point? It was 46. What was the relative humidity? It was 80+% because those numbers are very close to each other. But what happens in the afternoon is our air changes. We know what happens, right? It warms up. The sun comes up, temperatures start rising. And what happens is as the sun rises and the temperatures warm up, your dew point really doesn't change a whole lot. And that's the case most days around here. We don't have big jumps in the dew point, but we do have big jumps in the temperature. And what happens is you take that dew point of 46 and that temperature of 48, and by the afternoon, you've got a dew point of, say, 48 and a temperature of nearly 80 degrees. You've spread those two numbers apart. You've increased the amount of space that moisture can fit in. So what you've done is you've given yourself a bigger moisture bucket. And now you have all this empty space and your relative humidity bottoms out. It starts dropping. You usually have relative humidity in the 30s and 40% during the day. So think of it that way. The farther apart those numbers are, the temperature and the dew point, that determines your relative humidity. If they're far, far away, your relative humidity is low. If both of those numbers are close together, your relative humidity is going to be pretty high. The only thing that would break this rule is if you got a shower or thunderstorm that came in during the middle of the day. That cools off your temperature, right? Rain-cooled air. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to put it closer to your dew point temperature, and that means your relative humidity is going to be higher. So hopefully that makes sense. Those were both fantastic questions, by the way. And one of those actually came in, I think it was this one, during Ask Andrew Live a couple of weeks ago. So it's a good reminder that if you've got a question, you can submit it even right here. And if it's a good one that I really want to do a deeper dive on, that's exactly what we'll do here on Ask Andrew Live. So we are down to the 10-minute mark here as it is 20 minutes past the top of the hour. Now we're going to turn to your questions, what you've got for me. Again, if it's weather related, you can send it into our number. It's 309-304-0888, 309-304-0888, 309-304-0888. Getting the call out now. Free to text as long as you have that unlimited text plan. Otherwise, data rates may apply. Putting that asterisk in there. You can also send it on our Facebook stream too. Let's see who we have got right off the bat this morning. I'm going to guess without even looking at my phone that Riley is in here with us this morning, and there's a joke to be read. Let's see if I'm right. I'm going to pull it up right now. I kind of put it in the background. It's just kind of chilling, suspended in motion here. She's the first one. Good morning, Riley. It's good to have you along with us this morning. All right, let's see what the joke is here this morning. What happens when the fog lifts in California? That's a good question. What's the answer? UCLA. I like that. That's a good one. That is a great joke. If you were just thinking of these off the top of your head, you are smart as a whip. These have been so good. I've been loving these every Wednesday. We've been reading these. We also have our good friend Billy from Clinton in the chat this morning. Good morning to you. They're wondering what the Madden-Julian oscillation, the mojo, and how does this affect our weather patterns? Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you, Billy. I hope you have a wonderful day too as well. Let me poke around on my computer really quick and see if I have a graphic. It's been so long since we've talked about the MJO that I don't even remember if I've even covered it, let alone made a graphic about it. And it looks like we have not talked about it at all because nothing's coming up when I search about this little oscillation thing. So the MGO, what Billy is referring to, these are all patterns that take place way out in the oceans. We're talking about patterns with low pressure and high pressure. Those definitely have some really big impacts on our weather. It's a cyclical pattern, so it goes around and around and around, and it has all these different cycles. So then now this is another thing I can do a deep dive into for next week because, again, I'm not finding anything in my graphics system that shows we've ever talked about this. So Billy just gave me my question for Monday that I'm going to go over and make some cool graphics for. But I'll give you a brief explanation again. These are all, there's 8 different cycles this thing goes through. And we know based on past history, depending on what cycle it aims for, 1 through 8, what usually corresponds and what happens weather-wise here in the United States in terms of our weather patterns. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. These are all usually pretty reliable indicators. It is especially true when it comes to hurricane season, forecasting hurricane seasons. The MGO is very reliable. And also cold air, more specifically cold air with storm systems attached to it. We use the MJO very frequently when it comes to forecasting in the winter. It's usually a good indication of where the coldest air is going to be, how long it's going to stick around, and also if there's going to be any storm systems attached to that too. So Billy, I'm sorry I didn't have anything in the docket there in the tank for you that I could show you, because obviously we have not talked about this yet. But now this is something that I can talk about on Monday for Ask Andrew during GMQC, and it really is a fascinating little cycle that we watch. So I'll explain more about that on Monday and put together some nice graphics for you then that we can do a little bit of a deeper dive on. All right, we also have Chris Bishop in the chat here this morning. Good morning, Chris. He says, how many weather apps besides the Storm Track 8 app should a person have on their phone? What kind, and why is the information different on each? So that's a great question. So if you're curious, being a meteorologist, how many weather apps do I have on my phone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have 14 different weather apps on my phone. I have the Stations app. I have a national app. I have a radar app. I have a reporting app. I have a personal weather station app. I have all these different apps on their phone. How many apps should you have on your phone? Well, first, I would say, how many are you comfortable with getting notifications from? Because when we get severe weather, of course, being a meteorologist and having the responsibility here at the station, I want to be notified about every single little hiccup that happens in our weather. So I have all these different apps that provide me different notifications. I have one that tells me pollen alerts. I have one that tells me about earthquakes. I have one that tells me about extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme winds, all of that. So that's why I have more than a dozen weather apps loaded on my phone. What I would suggest, if you're an average user, I think the station app is great. I think for everybody, 9 out of 10 people, the Storm Track 8 app is the way to go because it gives you lightning notifications, it gives you rain starting notifications, all that good stuff, severe weather notifications, all of it. If you want to get a little bit more involved, there are other apps you can get. One of them, Weather Underground, that's a great app that has good resources if you want to see personal weather station data. I use that a lot to see my weather station back home in Geneseo and also in Sterling. Also, how in-depth do you want to go with radar data? The Storm Track 8 app is great for displaying radar data if you're an average user. If you're a weather weenie, though, and you want to get something a little bit more in-depth, there's other apps out there. One of them being Radar Scope, that's a good one. There's another weather app that has some good radar too, that's Weather Front. Again, that's if you want to get more into the muddy details, if you really, really want to get into all these different radar products like rotation and hail potential and stuff like that. Most of those are a little too advanced for the average user and it can get a little confusing. That's why, again, I like the Storm Track 8 app for most folks because it covers all of the basics and even then some. But yeah, there's definitely some more apps that you can get out there. But just beware, the more weather apps you have on your phone, the more notifications you're going to have on your phone. And you could potentially end up in a situation like I do during severe weather, where your phone is on and it's linked to your smartwatch. Severe weather, I actually have to take my smartwatch off because I'm getting so many notifications it gets to be distracting. So keep that in mind. Again, the more apps you have on your phone, the more notifications you're going to be dealing with, but hopefully that gives you a good starting place on what you could potentially be looking at there. Let's see who else we have in the chat this morning. We have Noah in Davenport asking, why is the Atlantic so quiet right now? Isn't it the peak of hurricane season? And Noah is right. It is indeed the peak of hurricane season, and it is extremely quiet in the Atlantic right now. Really, it's been the Pacific Ocean that's kind of been hogging all of the action around here as of late. And let me pull up this. Again, it's going to be a little outdated in terms of our look. It's not our latest look. But there you see the midpoint. This is hurricane season, the average activity. It begins June 1st, it ends December 1st. And the midpoint is September 11th, which is coming up tomorrow. So tomorrow is the peak of hurricane season. But why has it been so quiet? The reason it's been quiet is we're seeing a lot of sinking air going on in the Atlantic region. The only spot where we don't have a lot of sinking air would be in the Gulf of Mexico. There's something called the gyre that's going to be coming into play here. And think of it as just a very big, broad area of low pressure, where you have a lot of that counterclockwise flow. And what can happen is sometimes in that gyre, you can get some storm systems that will develop in the Gulf and then work their way through. But you can see right now, we don't have any yellow, no orange, no red zones on the map. You can ignore those two polka dots, though those are tracking different things. But it's pretty quiet. You've got some disturbed weather here near Bermuda. That is not expected to do anything. What's happening, though, is we have a front that's actually laying itself out as we go further to the west. And I'll be able to show you that here. Again, ignore the text that you're seeing on the screen. This has not been updated yet with the latest text information. However, the satellite information that I'm showing you is pretty quiet. But this is a good example here of what that gyre is. You're noticing a lot of bright clouds here, not only in the Gulf of America, Mexico, whatever we'll call it the Gulf here, but you're also noticing a lot to the south of that. So there's definitely a lot of lifting motion going on in this region, and that could potentially, in the next couple of weeks, start getting something going in the Gulf. That's going to be the area to watch here in the near term, but otherwise it's pretty quiet. Could always load up on the back end, though. Again, this goes all the way to December 1st, so we're not done yet. We still got a few more months to get there. Melissa and Durant, last question here. Does the weather staff at WQ80 work with the weather staff at the other TV stations in the Quad Cities? We do not in the way you may be thinking. We all have the same mission. I'll tell you that. Our mission is to protect lives and property and give you the most accurate forecast as possible. So we do work together in that mission. However, we're not sharing studios, we're not sharing data, we're not sharing proprietary information, things like that. A lot of us too are friends outside of the TV business as well. So, we're all human. We all communicate. We all talk from time to time, and we're all kind of on the same mission, if you will. We've got a great group of meteorologists here in the Quad Cities. I've met just about almost every single one of them. I interned with Andy McCrae at Channel 4 when I was in college. So, yeah, I've made the rounds throughout the Quad Cities here, and you guys are in great hands. We have a very fantastic group of talented meteorologists, including right here at WQAD, where we're always tracking storms for you. That's perfect timing because we're about ready to hit the bottom of the hour here. I want to thank you guys for joining me this morning. This is always a treat when I get to interact with you and get all these fantastic questions. If you ever miss an episode, no worries. You can always stream it on demand on the 8+ app. I'll see you coming up for GMQC at 11 in just about 90 minutes from now. And if not, hopefully I'll see you later this week. And especially next Wednesday right here, we'll do Ask Andrew Live once again. Have a great Wednesday, Quad Cities.
Continue with us and watch free now on the 8+ app everywhere you stream.